Trigger warning. This podcast contains discussions about abuse, domestic violence, and intimate partner violence. Listener discretion is advised. What you are about to hear is a true story. My story. This podcast is about me, my abusive marriage, my fight for my life, and eventual daring escape from my ex-husband and his enabling family. My name is Bebe, and I am the authenticity warrior. My discernment about what I am facing has made me a target, but I must nonetheless speak up.
Okay, we're back.
Hello, everyone. This is Toro.
And it's Bebe here. And we're back with the Authenticity Warrior.
Yes, another week, another episode. So last week's episode was interesting. You had a conversation with our parents about the whole saga, the whole ordeal from their perspective, and then also got to ask them some introspective questions just overall. So how did that go for you talking with them, and what can you say that you got from that conversation?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that we're starting off with that, with the last episode, because you weren't there, obviously. It was just me and mommy and daddy. And it was interesting to listen to them and to hear the raw emotions again about how they felt about the whole thing. They were the only ones on ground again. I wasn't there. I wasn't in Nigeria. None of you were there. So they were the ones literally feeling the heat directly from Paulinus and his family, and just their disrespectful behavior and their just lack of accountability about the whole thing, and just their attempt to bully and dominate them. So I think for them, it was very jarring, very shocking to see these people flip 360 and just display the way that they did. And what that did actually was cause them, they already believed me. I really do have to make that very clear. But they were just like, what? You mean this is what you were going through? These people? Wow, they were just so shocked. And I think for them, as much as they're not the kinds of people to put their business out there, they saw that it was very important to actually bring their own perspective on here onto Authenticity Warrior so that people could hear, one, to validate my story, but then two, to let people know that there were so many people that were hurt in the course of everything that happened. And they are right behind me as casualties in the whole thing. And so I really appreciated them agreeing to do it. Their perspective was very raw. It was emotional, but they were able to maintain their composure and get their words out there. And so ultimately, I'm happy that people will get to hear what they have to say. And that also brings in again because I don't know who's going to listen to this podcast. Who knows the age range, right? So for people in their own demographic that may have questions, I think they were able to answer. They were able to bring that perspective as well of like people of their generation, of what cultural expectations may have been, of even religion, just everything in there. I'm glad that they were able to bring that here. And I'm not sure if they'll do this again, who knows? But yeah, I'm grateful. And later on, we will also get to hear from other people as well, or other siblings perhaps, and maybe some of my friends. But it was good to hear from them. And I'm glad we captured that.
You made a very important point there when you talked about cultural expectations and tradition and stuff, because when you really think about it, in our culture, Yoruba culture, when two people get married or come together, it's not just the individuals, it is the families that are entering into that matrimony, so to speak. And so even when it comes to time to either problem solve or solve conflict or even dissolve a dissolution of the union, it usually is done respectably or as respectably as possible between the families. Mm-hmm. And so for them to get the all the vitriol and the backlash, to be on the front line, so to speak, of what would have been directed at you and meant for you, and to see this unmasking just live and direct in real form, really must have been interesting for them. And so, yeah, I'm glad that, you got to talk to them and got to extract the salient points of their perspective from the whole situation. So that's good.
Yeah.
You didn't answer my follow-up question, though, which is, what did you get out of the conversation with them?
Oh, what did I get? I think for me, I was so proud of them in how they comported themselves. Mommy and Daddy were unshakable despite the disgusting display, that these people brought. So I was very proud of them that they held their own, and without playing or dabbling into any of the disrespect that these people were throwing out at them. Like, these people went low, but Mommy and Daddy just held their head up high, and they conducted themselves the entire time with dignity. I'm proud of how they supported me. Mommy and Daddy were unshakable, despite how these people tried to paint me, because they were like, I don't want to curse, but they're just like, no, not my daughter. It is not my daughter that you're describing like this. That is a fucking lie. I know my child. So these people were counting on maybe my parents possibly throwing me under the bus. They underestimated the strength of my relationship with my parents. They underestimated how much my parents know me. They also underestimated the things that I tell my parents, because some of the things that they felt they were going to throw in there as a grenade to get my parents to almost like back off and be like, this is our daughter's self. My dad was just like, yes, I know. She herself told me. So they were shocked that, what? You mean your daughter told me? Yes, my daughter told me. She told me the day it happened. So they were very shocked that there's nothing they wanted to use to get my parents to abandon me. There's no lie they tried to spin.
No gotchas, no.
Exactly. There's nothing that they tried to say. And my parents were just like, okay, and your son is still a fucking abuser, though. He needs to be in therapy. How about that? Yeah, I was proud of them. I was proud that these people didn't get their way in trying to destroy my family by spinning webs of lies and trying to cause chaos within our family. We're immovable, unshakable. And everybody stood firmly behind me and validated everything that I said. So unbeknownst to them, their own display of chaos further validated everything that I had written in my email.
Exactly.
Of course, I think it's important that I even read that email again. You know what? I think it's important that I read this email as often as I can the entire time. Each time we have an episode of Authenticity Warrior, I think it's important we start with that email, because that thing is jarring. That thing is crazy. Even me, sometimes I think I cannot believe I endured all this. Yeah.
And that's what we're jumping into this episode, and probably the next one as well, is breaking down that email and really getting into the nitty-gritty and the real life material examples of what I would say is a high level description of hell.
Yeah.
So I guess without further ado, let's start off with that, with you reading the email out, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Again, just to recap, this was the day I landed. I'd left Nigeria on the 19th of November. Took almost 24 hours, literally, to get to my destination in Edmonton, Canada. Got there, took a hot nap, and proceeded to gather myself together and send out this email on the 21st of November. And this is what I sent. Paulinus. I'm sorry, I just have to laugh. Yeah. Paulinus. Today, I choose to dismantle a shame that is not and was never mine to carry by shattering my silence on the dynamic of our relationship. I have been severely mishandled, mistreated, devalued, and taken for granted over the entire course of our relationship and marriage. For almost 10 years, you have been a toxic and abusive partner in many horrifying ways: physical assault, sexual harassment, coercion, and continued threats to pursue other sexual partners, and your relentless weaponization of infidelity, extended violent outbursts of extreme and scary rage and anger, relentless emotional manipulation and verbal abuse, bullying and intimidation as tactics of control, reckless and dangerous behavior as a means of punishment. For example, continued dangerous driving with the children and myself while in a rage, financial neglect. On several occasions, not even the presence of the children nor any of my visible pregnancies could deter your blind rage, and there was no effort on your part to model appropriate behavior, thereby terrifying and distressing the boys. At your hands, the boys and I have been in distinct life-threatening incidents, and your continued unchecked behavior has worn me out. In tolerating and accommodating all this, I became a person I no longer recognized. I will no longer allow myself and my children to be subject to a toxic and unhealthy environment and exposed to barbarous behavior. I am separating myself from you and this marriage, and there is absolutely no room for reconciliation on this. I am done. I think that's just the gist of it. Towards the end, I had just assured him that the children and I are well, and I just needed some space and would reach out to him as we move forward with co-parenting. And that's the end.
Wow. Every time you read that email, it's just chills, just because of how heavy it is and how declarative it is in its nature. And I absolutely agree with you that you should read it out as often as you can throughout this podcast project discussion, whenever, because it's always a reminder. It's just always a reminder of that full stop that you put when you say, I am done. Like I said, just very declarative. And so this episode, I guess, you want to begin really going into kind of like an exposition style description of some of the headings under there. And so before we jump in, I think it's imperative that we give a trigger warning just for the audience. This episode, you'll be talking about things to do specifically with the topics of physical assault, of emotional and psychological manipulation, and verbal abuse, and perhaps one or two other things that fall under the greater heading of abuse and like toxicity, both environmentally and, directed at you.
Yeah. So I will be getting into those details. And like you said, the trigger warning is necessary because I'm not holding back. I don't have a choice. Doing this, there's no point in doing this, in grabbing a mic and speaking, and then I'll then be holding back and then not say everything. I'm saying every goddamn thing. Every single thing that I went through in this marriage is coming out.
In explicit detail.
In explicit detail. And this is my story, and I have a right to speak about what happened to me. And I've spent the better part of 10 years covering up someone else's bullshit. And when I said I am done, I'm done. I have no obligation to keep anybody's bullshit under wraps, because till now, I am still being antagonized by this man and his family. And so what really is the point in covering the shame of people that have no intention of having any shame for themselves? So
even if they were contrite, even if they did all the right things, you said something that's just irrefutable there, which is your story is your story, and you have a right to it, and you have every entitlement to tell it as many times as you want, in whatever nature that you feel, and and how explicitly you want to. It's your story. So yeah, without pulling any punches,
Yeah, we're going
Go
to get
for
in
it.
there. And so, trigger warning, honestly, we're dealing with some heavy topics under that banner of abuse. So, I know that I'm not the only one that has gone through some things. Whatever it is you need to do to protect your mental health, if you need to pause, you don't even, if you can't listen to this episode right now, maybe you need to get yourself to a healthier place because I don't want anybody triggered unnecessarily or triggered in a manner that will put you in an unhealthy space. So please take good care of yourselves before delving deeper or going further into this episode. So that's it. There's something you mentioned that anytime you see that email or hear me read out that email, what it communicates to you. And I like that he says something to you each time he hears, because it also does to me too as well. Because today, reading out that email again, I'm just like, my goodness, I was married to a beast. There's just no other way to say it. And it breaks my heart constantly that I was so just in the sauce that this guy had prepared for me. For goodness sake, driving recklessly, not just with me, but with the children. There was just this guy didn't have any guardrails. And I offered myself up as a sacrifice that this man, please. And even that was still not enough to protect me, to protect my children. And again, I really do have to club it into people's heads that what will cause a mother and 3 children to literally gather themselves and disappear? It has to have been a desperate move.
Mhm.
And before the end of this episode, you yourselves will understand. If anybody was even in any doubt at all, you'd be like, really and truly. But yeah. So what do we start with, sis?
Let's talk about the physical assault. Because this is one topic that often people wouldn't even give credence to allegations of abuse without this one. This is almost like the qualifier, what legitimizes an accusation. Okay, but did he touch you? They always say, did he put his hands on you?
Mm-hmm. And that's so fucked up because
there's so much more that happens. But there's so much that
really
can happen.
Destroy and break you.
Yeah.
Even without laying
the
a
threshold
finger on you.
of physical assault.
So to be honest, it hurts that sometimes I have to speak about the physical abuse before I feel people settle in and be like, okay, you went through something. And that kind of hurts because every other thing else is just as valid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the physical abuse. If you are observant, you will notice in my email, I actually said physical assault. Because even as at the time of writing that email, I still felt like I was holding back. Like I couldn't even bring myself to say abuse because I was still gaslighting myself and feeling like, okay, mine wasn't as bad as some other victims that I know. Can I really call what I went through abuse? Or is it safer to just call it assault? Do you understand what I mean? And it was also the same thing too as well with the sexual abuse, but we'll get into that in a later episode, where I couldn't just even name the thing, call it exactly what it was, because I was afraid, or because, exactly, at the time I was afraid that maybe mine wasn't as bad. And, that is, again, still the abuser having infected you. They do all this rubbish shit to you, and then they find they spew out their justifications for why they're hurting you and harming you. And as a victim, as their perfect victim, you believe it. You believe the lie. So by the time you get the strength to even start calling it out, you're using very gentle words because
you're still doubtful.
You're still doubtful of what it is you experienced. You're still in a serious state of confusion. The physical abuse I endured in the hands of this man actually started prior to even marrying him. And as much as I don't believe, let me not say I don't believe in regrets, because I do, but will I take back marrying this man? I'm not sure I can answer yes. And that shit scares me. But the reason why is because of the 3 beautiful children that I have. I cannot imagine my life without them. So for those 3 alone, I'm not sure if I could turn back the hands of time, I would. However, I will say that was what this guy did to me before I married him was a blaring red flag from God, from who, if you don't believe in God, from the universe, that don't marry this guy, run for the hills. And when you ignore a red flag like that, I've realized that like a part of you has to die. A part of you has to literally, if not die, a part of you has to go within yourself and lock away a core of who you are.
Suppression. It's
you
suppression.
have to suppress a significant part of yourself in order to then still proceed after encountering such a red flag.
Let's talk about the red flag.
Okay.
What was this incident before the marriage? So paint a picture.
You're my sister. We cuckoo grew up together. So you know how playful we can be. You know how when you're playing with your siblings or even your friends, maybe you tap someone here, you tap someone there, and then it's now a race to who tapped last kind of thing.
Play fighting.
Yeah,
like
it was kind of play fights that happen. So I was at this guy's house. This was in April 2016. We were to get married early July 2016. Just about 2 months to get married. I was getting ready to head back to Nigeria. I think I was heading back to Nigeria the following week. We were both in Canada at the time. So I was at his house. It wasn't uncommon to be at his house. It's not even his house. It's his father's house. His siblings were there. His mom was there. I had stayed over with them. So I was at his house. We were hanging out. And before you know it, some sort of pillow fights broke out. Hit each other there. And being the athlete that I am, I'm a fierce competitor. I don't lose to nobody. And I'm used to playing these games with my siblings, with my friends. Like, what's the big deal? So we're going back and forth. He hits me with the pillow. I hit him with the pillow. Hit me with the pillow. I hit him with the pillow. Before you know it, we even drop the pillows. And then it's now even a poke fight.
So it's just both of you. Where are you?
We're in his room, which is in the basement.
Okay.
Poke here, poke there. And he pokes me last. I poke him again. Then I poke him again. And then I'm starting to notice that like this guy's pokes are becoming more aggressive. This is not even a matter of, oh, I'm the one that poked you last. It's starting to feel like he's trying to inflict pain. So, and I'm like, So I poke again. I'm like, what's going on here? And then he like shoves.
So it switched from a regular playful tussle.
Yeah, it switched like up on me. That is the regular play fights that we're all used to. And so I'm like, I poked him, so I'm like, excuse me, like, what? It's so funny that even in my head, when I'm like, oh, how come I didn't even shove or push back? Because I feel like a part of me was just like, Abi, let me not shove. Let him not think that this is actually a fight. Like, I still poked him back again. Because in my head, I'm like, I won't shove you back, but I'll still show you that I will poke last. That is so weird. Then he shoved me again. And I'm like, what's going on? And we do this back and forth. Before I know it, this guy is actually over me. Toro, I've tried to put myself back again into that same space. And I still do not understand. And as I'm even trying to narrate this thing to you guys, like, I am so confused. And I hope I'm not even confusing you guys too, because I honestly cannot explain how this thing went from poking to this guy pinning me on the bed. He's over me because we're in his room, we're on his bed doing all of this. So I'm flat on the bed and this guy is barreling over me and he's hitting. And so I'm trying to, my arms, my legs, everything flailing. Because I'm like, what is going on? I'm trying to
extricate yourself.
Exactly.
Like,
I'm trying to hit him off. I'm trying to get him off, but he's like slapping, hitting, like not my face, but like my body. And so me too, my arms and legs are kicking and hitting and all over the place. And before I know it, this guy grabs me by the neck and is choking me. And he is choking me. And at first, what I saw was his chest. And then I look up to his face and I look at his eyes. And it feels like this guy can't even see me. I feel like I'm seeing right through the person I'm looking at. And he's still choking me. And I'm looking at his face confused. And it's like I left my body and I said to myself, I'm like, am I about to die? But it's like fight or flight. That instinct just kicked in. And I don't even know where I got the strength from. I shoved this guy off me. And the way I stumbled, I don't know how I got off the bed. I don't know how I stumbled out of the room, but I was disoriented. And I was just like, what just happened? It was so confusing. Like,
it sounds crazy.
Damn. Like, Tara, when I tell you that I was shocked to my core, I was so confused by what happened because, again, we were just playing. I don't know how play turned to me saying, am I about to lose my life? That was crazy. So that happened. I stumbled out of his room. In fact, I'm in my nightie and my things are in his room. The thought that came to my head was just, get your things and get out of this house right now. My things are in his room. I'm in my nightie. Like, I can't just leave the house like that. So I ran up the stairs because his room was in the basement. I ran up the stairs and I saw his cousin, his younger cousin, a guy. And I asked him, I still do not know how to tell that guy what just happened to me. So I just on the spot formulated a story. I said, hey, I just came upstairs, but I think I forgot my things down in your cousin's room. Please, can you help me go get it and everything? So he was even busy making a sandwich in the kitchen. I'm sure he was just confused, like, okay, you forgot your thing. Go back and get it now. But he was like, okay, sure, no problem. So he just like, unbeknownst to him, the atmosphere down there, started heading down to the basement, wanted to help me get my things. And I just heard Paulinus rage at this guy. I was like, will you get out of here? And like the venom that guy received, like till today, I still feel bad that I put that guy in the position because I didn't tell him what he was walking into. I thought Paulinus would comport himself and just not reveal, So the guy gets there, the guy gets screamed at and was literally chased. Like the way I heard him run up the stairs as if he was chased up the stairs. And so I just said, I'm sorry. And the guy looked at me confused, like, what the F? What the hell is going on down there? And I just said, I'm sorry. I was like, you know what? Don't worry. I'll get it myself. Thank you. And so I started slowly descending down those stairs because I was afraid of what I would meet. I'm like, is this guy going to finish me off there? Like, what's going to happen? So I slowly go down the stairs and I see this guy. He is seated, his arms akimbo, and he's like breathing heavily. His eyes are like wide open and he's breathing heavily. And so I gingerly, I want to see if I can just sneak in, get my things and come out. And then he stops me and is like, hey, you. And I kind of stop and he's just, see what you made me do. When he just started going off in a rant. Oh, see what I made him do. How many times has he told me that I'm too playful? That why am I always playing? That don't I know when to stop? Blah, blah, blah. And he just goes on in that kind of rant and almost painted the whole thing as my fault. That almost like, oh, you should know that when you're dealing with a man, you don't provoke a man, kind of rubbish. And I'm saying rubbish now, but then I was just like, is it this my play or my not wanting to lose? I bruised his ego kind of thing. So of course, I feel ashamed to say that like the kind of person that I was then, I felt, maybe quote unquote, as a woman, you're not supposed to do that kind of thing. Of course, now I know now that's just like
programming
it's just the bullshit that they feed to women to keep women in their place. So as terrified as I was, I felt, okay, maybe I should not have try to poke last. Okay, this guy seems to have a temper and he seems to black out when he's angry. But maybe if I modify my behavior and don't ever get him to that point, then I'm not likely to be in this situation again. Because up until this point, I had never seen anything like this before. Occasionally, I'd seen him, get upset, get angry or whatever. You know how sometimes you give men a pass for their anger that you wouldn't necessarily give to women. So I just assumed, okay, sometimes, a man can wild out, can get a little angry. So I'd seen that, but I had never seen this kind of display before. So I just passed it off as maybe this is a one-off incident. And if I modify my behavior, then he wouldn't get to that point again. I wouldn't bring that out of him, quote unquote, because that's the way he submitted it to me, that I made him do that. And at that time, I bought that.
Well, and that's just classic manipulation from someone who does not want to take any accountability or responsibility for their own actions. And so this was 2-3 months before you get married. The way it got resolved was by him not really giving a proper apology or explanation or account for this horrifying incident. And it's just you moving along saying, okay, I just won't get him this angry. And that's how I'll navigate with this.
Yeah. And in retrospect now, I realize why, because well into the years when we'd been married, sometimes you pass a comment, you're not as playful as you were before, or whatever. Me, I just felt, okay, I guess today or whatever. I'm older now, I'm a mom. Where's the time to play? But I trace it back now to that day, because that day, what was communicated to me was my playfulness is dangerous. And so I just became guarded around him. I didn't realize it, but I never allowed myself to be so free with this man to completely forget myself and think I'm playing with a friend. We're just, immediately I think my body started to tense up and understand that there has to be a line here when you're dealing with this person. If not, you are going to be in danger. So I noticed that I became very cautious around him. And while we would have laughs and we'll have good times, it was easy for me to have good times under the banner of maybe I'm the butt of his jokes. But I never allowed him to be the butt of my jokes. I never allowed him to be the recipient of my playfulness. Do you get? I was there to service him and his humor, but he couldn't do the same for me.
They're one-sided.
And for people who know me, my not taking things too seriously, my playfulness is actually a huge part of who I am. And so it just kind of sucks that person had to go. Or at the very least, in the relationship that I was having with someone that was supposedly my life partner. And what also sucks in all of this is, and I have to say this, not because I think my parents or my family or my friends would have felt any kind of way. When you're stuck in that kind of people-pleasing cycle, because this is 2 months to the wedding, who am I going to tell this story to? And that person would actually let me walk down that aisle in good conscience. The wedding is off. The wedding is off. And this is 2 months to the wedding. All the money that has been spent, all the invitations that have gone out, I'm literally getting on a flight the following week to head to Nigeria for my wedding. I think a part of me was I don't want to inconvenience anybody with this new development. So I will just keep it to myself and just proceed with caution with this man.
And so you didn't tell anyone, and that's just again, another aspect of our conditioning as women, this whole you mustn't inconvenience anyone, don't take up too much space, don't be a burden, like, always be the one to accommodate and compromise without causing any ripples or ruffling any feathers, so much so that one would feel compelled to go ahead and walk into such a situation simply because you don't want to be disruptive. Yeah.
That, you're right. That programming of also covering a person's shame, because it's not that I understand now that this guy had been manipulating me from the beginning, because he always had some sub story about how some person did him wrong, one thing or the other. He was always a victim in all his stories. And so he had put this thing on me where I felt I had to cover his shame. Oh, let me not expose him. Let people not be looking at him somehow.
Yeah, feeling responsible.
Yeah.
For his reputation.
And of course, the fact that he had even full on blamed me for this incident, and I, in that time, believed it to be true. It didn't seem, quote unquote, fair to then tell someone else and have someone else almost flip it and be like, oh no, it's him. I think there was a lot of fear that I was going to be betraying him, because abuse can't work if you're not truly in love with the person. Okay, let me rephrase that. I won't say abuse can't work, but the lie that the person says to you wouldn't land if it's not that you actually truly love the person and believe every word they say. You trust them. So I trusted him telling me that I was the one that caused this. Yeah. And when was the first time you all heard the story? You all heard the story in 2021, November. When I left, that's when you all heard the story for the very first time. So imagine from April 2016 to November 2021, I did not tell a soul that this guy did this thing to me.
Okay, so this incident happens. You don't tell anyone. You go ahead and you still marry Paulinus. How was the environment of the marriage with this in the backdrop, with this revelation that he is someone who get aggressively and physically angry? Did you ever see that kind of demeanor from him again over the course of the marriage? Did he hold himself back? How was the environment?
Yeah, so I do have to say, with abuse, and that's what makes things so confusing, because the good times can be like a fairy tale. And so when the bad happens, it is a struggle. But the good times are so good that you find everything possible to sweep the bad away from your mind, away from your reality, because the good is so good and you don't want anything to destroy that for you. So you spend a huge portion of your time when you're in an abusive relationship in confusion, because no matter how you want to sweep those bad feelings away, your body remembers. Your body notices everything. You feel like you've forgotten that this man literally strangled you, but you guys can be having a simple discussion. And a newly married couple, you're figuring things out. You notice a slight uptick in his voice. You tense up. In your mind, you feel like you have forgiven and forgotten that this guy strangled you, but your body will not let you forget. So just even a simple discussion as to, I don't know, just a very simple discussion like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put my shoe there. And then you notice a change in his voice. You tense up because you're like, let this man not strangle me again. Of course, you don't say it in your head, but your body, that's what your body is communicating to you when it's tensing up at even a non-threatening situation.
I think when you say your body, I think you mean more so you're either unconscious or subconscious. So that part of you that what you're saying that we discussed earlier about suppressed or repressed, just because you're not conscious of it, but somewhere in your mind, you still remember the danger, so to speak, the atmosphere of danger. And so that tingling that you're feeling in your body, the physiological response is you going into fight or flight because of the prompting from your subconscious or conscious that is resonating with something now that's happening in the present that seems familiar.
I agree with you. And I'm glad that you explained it, because you explained it better than I probably could. That's exactly what happens. And so imagine you get married, newlyweds or whatever, you're figuring your shit out. So as much as you're enjoying the newlywed phase, you're enjoying your honeymoon phase, it's beautiful. You feel like you're in love with the person, but you're human beings. I found for me, certain things that would bother me or certain things that I would otherwise have told another person, hey, I don't really like when you blah, blah, blah. I noticed that I was silencing myself. I hardly ever brought things up and said this thing was bugging me. This thing was bothering me. That's one thing. Then I noticed he took up a lot more space. He became even more comfortable in our relationship now that we were married, or there was some sort of permanence to the relationship. I noticed him relax a lot in our relationship, and relax in a way that in some areas were good. I guess he was being his full self, but for the most part also in ways that were bad.
What do you mean by that? When you say taking up space, do you mean so much so that it's breaching your boundaries, reducing any space that you then have access to, moving you into a corner?
That's what
not being able to be expressive.
That's what I mean. So for example, when this guy first met me and all the time we were dating, he had portrayed himself as a non-drinker. Because I didn't used to drink. It wasn't, part of it was for religious reasons, but I don't even believe, the religion wasn't really, it was mostly because at the time, I didn't like the taste of alcohol. It was very bitter to me. So I didn't used to drink. And this guy had positioned himself as a non-drinker. He had said, he used to in his far away past, but he hadn't drank in a long time. And in fact, a huge core of our dating life was we used to drink tea together all the time. We used to drink tea, drink like 3-4 cups of tea together and we'd just talk. So we get married and I notice, but he would set it up. He would just show up very angry from work and be like, God, today was such a rough day or such a bad day or traffic this, traffic that. And he's showing up with a bottle of alcohol. So they already set it up where today was such a bad day. That's why I'm here with this alcohol. Normally I wouldn't have a bottle of alcohol, but excuse me now, today was so bad. So I noticed him showing up more frequently to the house with alcohol. And at first he showed up with like a bottle, but then one particular day, this guy showed up with a whole bag. He had bought different kinds of liquor. And it's one thing if it was like a bottle of wine or whatever, like hard liquor, like gin, like what's the other one? Is it that brown one? I forget.
Hennessy?
Yeah, but what's the kind of Hennessy? Like Scotch cognac, or what?
Cognac, yeah.
That's what the guy was showing up with. And I remember being jarred a little, like, what's going on? And before, when he would prime and be like, today was such a bad day, or traffic was like this, or you won't believe the day that I had. This time when he showed up with that huge bag, he didn't even answer me, he didn't even tell me anything. And I tried to ask and the guy just scoffed and I was just like, I beg. I was a little taken aback. So this is what I mean by silencing myself and him just taking up space, not caring, not even checking for me. It's not like I have to say this, that, okay, I don't have a problem with alcohol. Truly and genuinely, I don't. But my point, this is not how I met you.
Yeah.
So why are you just like undressing here for me and you're not even you're not even giving me any due explanation or any due, hey babe, Omo, one thing. You're just going far left from the guy that I met. And all of that would even still be okay if I felt he was a person that could handle his alcohol. If I felt like he was a person that, okay, you drink your alcohol, because there's some people they drink and is to sleep. But he will get belligerent when he drinks. The temper, quote unquote, the anger problems that I'd been noticing from this guy would always get worse when he drinks. And so
escalation of like the toxicity of the environment.
Yes.
You get like angry and.
Yes, because I have to say, we spent a huge portion of our relationship long distance. In fact, when we even got married, I was still in law school then. And I had to do bar one because I was a foreign student. So at least the first 3-4 months was still long distance of the marriage. So when I finished bar one and then I came back, that's when we officially started living together, sometime in like September or October of 2016. But I noticed that I started to walk on eggshells. It felt like almost everything that I did was annoying this guy. He was nitpicking. He would question. That it felt like there was not. I felt like, am I not a living and breathing human being that has managed to keep herself alive these past 26 years?
So like you couldn't do anything right.
Yeah. He would nitpick. I was walking on eggshells constantly. And it's one thing when he would nitpick. Sometimes he would nitpick in a calm manner. Sometimes he would nitpick in a full-on rage, screaming. And I would be so confused. I'm like, is it about this issue of, oh, you put this fork here, you didn't put it there, that this man... Because when he's raging at me, it's like I would leave my body and I'm just watching, because I'm not the kind of person to shout or like be very expressive with emotion like that. So I'll just be looking, and it's almost like you're seeing a monkey just like bouncing off the walls, and I'll just be observing and just looking at him, and he's screaming bloody murder over some silly hairline issue. Till today, Toro, I cannot tell you half of why this guy was shouting and screaming at me.
Because it often isn't really about whatever the immediate issue on ground is. There's a lot of projection. There's a lot of insecurity. I
could never understand what the issue was. But somehow there's an issue and I'm the cause of it. And this guy will be screaming. So I already settled it in my mind that this guy has serious anger issues. I would just do my best to just try not to aggravate. That was the solution I thought of. Because I could just marry the man who want to hear that, oh, I think I want to leave, kind of thing. And again, let's not forget, this is someone that I loved at the time. I felt that, okay, let me try and understand him. Let me try and help him. That's the angle too that a lot of women take. Okay, let me help him. Me too, I'll be telling him, I'll be trying to help him with his anger, how to manage it. You don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do this. But once he's angry like this, he doesn't hear anything. He doesn't see anything. So that was the atmosphere in the house. And I do have to say this in all honesty. When people get angry and, they break plates, they punch walls, they flip tables, bang tables.
It's physical intimidation. Yeah.
I would categorize that under physical abuse as well. Because I remember saying this to someone, I'm just like, I can feel that what this guy really wants to do is to actually punch me in the face. But he knows he can't just punch me in the face like that. And Kasala will not burst. A lot of these abusers, they know how to work their victim up to the point where they can comfortably be punching them in the face and the victim will take it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there yet, he could see that there was still a bit of a fight in me. There's no way he's going to just punch me in the face like that. Right? So I could see all the physicality that he would display, punching walls, breaking plates, flipping tables, banging this and that, slamming doors. It's to physically intimidate you as his victim.
Yeah, as their victim.
It is to physically intimidate you and almost communicate to you that, look, oh, me, I be mad person, oh. And to also let you know that all this strength and physicality I'm displaying here,
it really could be you.
Yeah. Right now is an inanimate object, but if you just imagine if a victim decides to challenge him in the moment as he's there breaking plates or slamming doors or punching a wall, and the person is like, why would you do something like that now? The next thing is, to turn the physicality onto that victim. Exactly. So that's what they're trying to communicate to you, that look, they are really mad. So you better watch out. For me, he didn't really need to communicate that because number one, I already knew he was mad. But then two, my natural disposition in a fight, because I am not confrontational, is to actually shut down. And Toro, when I tell you, I think that is why I am actually alive today. Because I would never provoke a fight. Anytime this guy comes with his chaos, I would literally shut down and be mute. I wouldn't say one word.
So just disengaged.
I would disengage. I wouldn't even move. I wouldn't even make any sudden movements. And I would just be looking at him. Because sometimes I can tell that, because sometimes the abuse is so much, he's physically angry, the physicality combined with the verbal abuse, the things he would call me, the ugly, dirty words, the things he would say to me.
So just frothing at the mouth.
Frothing at the mouth in anger. And sometimes it's difficult for your spirit to take. So sometimes I'll be like, should I just try and leave, try and dash out? Like, sometimes when he gets in that state, sometimes I'll be looking at the exit. I'll be looking at the door. And I'll be trying to calculate how fast can I run out of here? But I would never do it. Do you know why? Because I'm like, if I even attempt to get up from where I'm sitting, or if I even make any sudden movements, this guy would just grab me and finish me. Sometimes I can tell that that's what he's waiting for me to try and make a movement so that he can justify it in his head that, oh, maybe she was trying to, maybe she was trying to hit me or something. But rather than wait for me to actually hit him, he will now just descend on me. So I'm just like, no, absolutely not. I will sit still. I'll be as still as can be. I wouldn't make a move. And this guy would display, exhaust himself. Sometimes he will now even slip off. Because again, like I told you, this is on the back of the heavy drinking. So I remember calling him out on it and be like, hey, this you're drinking. He'd be like, hey, he needs it to sleep. He's very stressed. Work this, work that. So after heavy drinking like that, he would display his anger. Then that's when he will not be able to sleep off like a baby. To be honest with you, all of it was very bizarre. And I think this is why for me, very, very early on into our marriage, I could already see that I had entered into some one chance that I could not explain. But I felt trapped as a newlywed, as a woman in Nigeria, in a religious society, as it were. What do I want to say to people? Yeah. It's tough when I try and think on just the atmosphere of just tension. There's really no reason why any human being should live like that. And I say I apologize to myself for allowing myself to live that way for the 5 years that I did. And most importantly, even exposing my children to that kind of barbarous behavior, allowing them see that kind of rubbish, because that never mattered to him, whether the children were there or not. He could be raging and screaming at whoever, whether it's me, whether it's the nanny, whether it's his driver, whether it's any of his workers. It felt like this man just did not know how to comport himself. And it felt like absolutely no one was safe from his bullying, domineering, and just, there's no other way to say it, his barbarous behavior. This guy is a fucking beast. And that's just what it is.
So you were married to this individual, Paulinus, for 5 years. And over the course of the marriage, you had 3 children, so 3 pregnancies. I had read somewhere, that there's an uptick. Stats do show that there's an uptick in abuse when women are pregnant. And I'd actually seen another study somewhere where pregnancy is an indicator for abuse, in the sense that, I can't remember what it said, either that the cause, whatever, what's the cause of death, like the highest cause of death for pregnant women, it's often intimate partner violence, homicide as a result of that, or that something to the effect of, when you break down the demographics of women who are abused, at the highest incidence are amongst women who are pregnant. I can't remember exactly what it was, but either way, it's an indicator for an uptick in abuse. Something about just a woman being pregnant just seems to aggravate an abuser more, or even induce it. That's when they first really show their true faces. So 3 pregnancies over the course of 5 years, that's a significant chunk. Can you speak to your experiences while you were pregnant? Did they exacerbate? Was there any relief? How was it?
Yeah, because since I left, I have been doing a lot of research, and I was horrified to discover that what I went through wasn't isolated. It's been studied that when you are with an abusive partner, pregnancy, things like that actually aggravates abusers and brings out the abuse often gets worse. And again, it boils down to just their selfishness and their disgusting preoccupation with their ego. In the sense that when a woman becomes pregnant, like, that's her focus.
Yeah,
her
everything
child
isn't about
being healthy. And so they get angry and they get upset that you are no longer they're no longer the center of your world, and they lash out. And that's where you see cases of men beating up their pregnant partners to the point of miscarriage. Some of them even like homicide, like you said, suicide, homicide, where they kill the pregnant partner and they kill themselves. All this crazy shit like that.
Or even like, what's the word? I'm not sure what the qualifier to use, but like slipping abortion pills, for instance, to the woman while she doesn't know.
Things like that. For me, what I experienced in the hands of Paulinus in my pregnancies were extreme coldness, distance, and just a general lack of care. This guy
More
didn't
so
give a
than
damn.
when you weren't. Like, did the neglect elevate while you were pregnant?
Yes. So I already felt like this guy didn't really give a damn about me. And I was just there to serve his purposes or whatever. I was just there to fulfill whatever it is he felt I needed to do there. But my pregnancies, which were often very difficult for me, I have to say, I was not one of those glowing, happy, beautiful, just sunshine in the rain kind of pregnant woman. My pregnancies always kicked my butt. Okay. I would be at my lowest energy wise. I would be so sick for so long. I can't keep anything down. I'll be so frail. I would often lose weight in pregnancy. So my pregnancies were always tough. So the general neglect that I was already experiencing in my marriage would become more apparent because now I am actually sick. I am physically sick. This guy will not follow me any goddamn where. antenatal appointments, any of that. This guy was never there. I remember once when the guy actually showed up. This is when I was still pregnant with my first child. Because I had gone to the hospital because he was never there anyways. And there was never an expectation that he would come with me. But this day he randomly showed up and I was very shocked. I was so surprised. So they make you beg for the most basic of things, or they deprive you so much of the most basic of things that when they now toss you a bone, like him randomly showing up at the hospital, it was like a highlight for me. Like, oh my God, you came. Whereas this is, my goodness, this is standard. And this is our first child anyways. Why is it such a big deal that you managed to come this one time
Once.
and he never came again? You understand? So the neglect would be all the more apparent when I'm pregnant, because I am here vomiting my ass off, and this guy would do as if he did not hear, he did not see. One particular time, it was so bad, like this, because it was in our room. I was so out of it. I had made such a mess vomiting that this time he actually even had to clean it. And I remember as he was cleaning, the grumbling, I felt so bad. Like I felt tense that, my goodness, I was like, I'd inconvenienced him in a way because I had puked, but because the thing had hit me so bad, I didn't actually get to the toilet. So there was such a mess in the washroom. And I could just hear him just huffing and puffing under his breath, and I felt like such a massive inconvenience. So to your question, my pregnancies definitely revealed to me how neglected I was in this marriage that I was in with Paulinus. But what was shocking to me was the anger still didn't stop. The rage still didn't stop. And that was very shocking to me, because when I see, especially in Nigeria, if you've been pregnant in Nigeria before, you would understand that the way they treat pregnant women, yeah, beji, random strangers. I experienced more care and love and just concern from random strangers that I had than from this man that was supposedly my husband. So the rage, I didn't understand how this guy would look at somebody visibly pregnant. My belly is out to here. And he is screaming and shouting at me at the top of his lungs for whatever the fuck happened.
So no recognition or acknowledgement of your condition, of your fragility, of none of that.
Zero. In fact, I remember in all the discomfort, in all the pain that I would be going through, sometimes he would pass comments like, oh, I'm exaggerating. Am I the first person to be pregnant? Those kinds of typical,
invalidating,
like, trying to invalidate my experience. And almost sometimes I could feel like the reason why he was even purposely still shouting and raging is like, I'm not going to treat you any differently just because you're pregnant. I could tell that was his stance, that I'm still going to treat you the same way. He almost felt like he was trying to say that maybe I'm using the pregnancy to try and avoid, quote unquote, in his mind, responsibility. So he's trying to one up me and show me that, even if you're pregnant, I will still shout on you, kind of thing. Like it was so bizarre and disgusting. But so that to me was very shocking, because that is what I had understood from, when you watch TV, the way when you're pregnant, sometimes some couples, that's even when they even get closer together. Some women even complain that's why some women like being pregnant, because it's when they're pregnant that, they feel all the love from their husbands and they feel like they are the apple of the man's eye. Whereas for me, I felt like I was inconveniencing the man. I felt like I just always felt worse for being pregnant. There was no added care. There was no any of that. So the rage never stopped. And in all of this is where one of the worst incidents that I'd ever experienced in the hands of this man happened. I am fully pregnant. I think I was about 30 something weeks. I was well into my third trimester. I was preparing to travel to Canada to have this baby. This was my second pregnancy. So I remember that we're in the living room. My youngest is right there with us. And the man himself, he's sitting in the living room. And our dining table at the time, was just off to the side there. So I believe the nanny had come in, it's dinner time. I think I had even already eaten. He came in late from work, so she was bringing his food on a tray. And then she brings the tray and the guy shouts at her. Because I think I was even on my phone, so I didn't even know. I just hear him shout like, my friend, you get us from here. How many times will I tell you? Blah, 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 blah. And he goes on and goes on. And the girl is so terrified. She carries the tray. She goes back into the kitchen. And before I know it, he now faces me. Before I can even find out what exactly, till today, I don't even think I can tell you what happened though. But from the way he was shouting and screaming, I can attempt to piece together that, oh, maybe the way she had set the tray was not how he would have preferred, or maybe there was something missing on the tray. I don't even know. But as he shouts at her, tells her to get out, blah, 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 the girl goes running into the kitchen. The guy faces me and just starts screaming at me. How many times have I told you to train this girl? Blah, blah, blah. I'm a king. I'm a king in this house and you're supposed to treat me like a king. You know, that I'm a king thing. The number of times I've heard that whole I'm a king. I'm just like, oh, God, let us rest. It's cuckoo shine, this small 2-bedroom apartment that we're living in. So what's all this noise of I'm a king as if we're living in some mansion or whatever? We're holed up in some tiny apartment that belongs to your father. Like, what is all this whole I'm a king that you shall just not let us rest? Anyway, he just starts screaming, I'm a king, and I've told you, you treat me like a king, all this nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And he's screaming. Before you know it, this guy is calling me all sorts of names. You're just so stupid. You're just so foolish. That's why you're like this. That's why you're like that. You don't have sense.
Where's your first?
My first child at the time, he's right there. He's right there. This is the first time that, again, I'm very well aware of the fact that, like, if it's not my pregnancy that will cause you to have sense, can this little boy, because between my first and second, they're just 18 months apart, can this little baby, his presence being here, cause you to have sense? Okay, if neither of them cause you to have sense, for goodness sake, what even happened? What is the issue, for God's sake, that requires that you go into such a rage like this? He calls me all sorts of ugly, unprintable, disgusting names. That's why I'm like this. That's why I'm so stupid. I don't have sense. I never think. He shall finish. In fact, no, he didn't even finish. What am I saying? He's going on and on. And again, like I told you, when he's raging, sometimes like it's like I leave my body.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm just observing. And I remember doing this, Toro. I looked at my belly because I was sitting down. And for people who know this Paulinus, this guy is 6'4", is he 6'5"? This guy is huge, massive. And then over the course of our marriage, he had gained a lot of weight. This guy is like, man, like an NFL linebacker. He's huge. And me, I sat down on the couch and I looked down at my belly. Then I looked at my son, who at the time, he was like, I saw him, he now, because the whole atmosphere was crazy. So I saw him, he grabbed his dad's leg and it was like he was punching it and like saying, Dad, stop. And then I looked at this Paulinus's face and he was just going on. I became so overwhelmed, Toro. I was utterly disgusted. I know I've used that word disgusted multiple times over the course of this episode, but truly, I was very disgusted by that image that I was looking at because my heart broke for my son, who I had become one of those women that their child is fighting the father so that they don't beat the mother. That's what that communicated to me. Then I looked at my pregnancy again because as this guy was calling me all sorts of names, saying all sorts of things, raging and screaming, my ears were like ringing. I felt like the pregnancy I was carrying was being affected by the negative energy. I felt like I was absorbing negative energy into the baby that I was carrying. And I looked at this man. This time I looked him dead in the eye, and he didn't stop. And the tissue that I was using to clean my eyes, like, I didn't even know when I stood up, because you know how I told you how I would never have the guts to even try and make an escape, because let this man not paying me somewhere and finish me off. But for some reason, the pregnancy I was carrying, I was just like, no, this is not okay. So I stood up, and I remember the tissue that I was carrying, the Kleenex, I tossed it in his direction and I said, is it not enough? Won't you stop? You are such a bully. I remember saying exactly that. And I literally ran off into the room, because I wasn't sure what would happen to me having said all that. But I sure ran into the room. But again, being a pregnant woman, I just realized that my bottle of water, I could never leave that particular pregnancy. I always had to have a bottle of water right beside me. I just realized, oh shit, I left my bottle of water. And as I tried to, in the middle of this man shout, but that water was more important to me, I tried to run out to grab my water. I just heard this guy slam the door and lock it. And the way my heart fell, because that water was absolutely necessary for me. I felt like I would die if I didn't have that water.
So you were actually thirsty in that moment.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. That particular pregnancy, I always had to have water. I was drinking water like almost every 5 seconds, sips of water. So, of course, I know that I wouldn't actually die, but that was just the psychological impacts that this is the first time I've ever been without my water. I was like, that thing shocked me, and I was like, my water. That's even what, like, if I had my bottle, if you had even locked me in there for like days, I probably may not have even like made a sound. But the fact that I felt that, oh my God, this guy is depriving me of something that I felt at that time was absolutely essential, my water. So I started banging on the door. I started crying. I said, let me out. Give me my water. This guy did not listen to me. And this was at night. I think they had even taken light. So generators were blaring and everything. Even like, I just felt like nobody could even help me. And you know, I had mentioned we lived in a compound with 3 or 4 other families. If I even felt like somebody could hear me, I may have even gone to a window and said, hey, somebody. But this was at night, generators are blaring. Who's going to hear me? The kitchen is on the other side. So the nanny can definitely not even hear me. So I was screaming. I was banging. Then I didn't even know when I actually sat down on the floor, just in despair, just because I didn't know how long this man would lock me in there. And Toro, what actually just finished me as I was just on that floor crying, I heard my son come to the door, struggling to open it. My goodness. My goodness. That was tough. That was tough. That was tough.
Why? What about that was particularly...
Toro, that was tough. Like, the fact that I put my child in that position. Till today, I praise God that I left this man when my children are still young. Because the impact to their psyche. I pray till today that boy doesn't even remember that incident. This guy was almost 18 months. He was probably 15 or 16 months at the time. He's a baby. And he's trying to open the door for his mom because his dad had imprisoned her in there. That's fucked up. That is fucking fucked up. I don't even know how to curse well, but that is crazy. Anyway, I'm there crying. Then I hear the guy make a phone call.
Just casually.
Casually make a phone call. And he's talking to this person and he's laughing, cackling, having the time of his life on that phone call. Then I decide, you know what? Let me try and bang this door again. And so I started banging the door again. I started screaming, open this door. Give me, like I was shouting, I was screaming, thinking that, okay, maybe the other person on the line would hear the chaos and that would cause this man to maybe be embarrassed or want to open the door or something. But no, this guy now started laughing even louder, started speaking even louder, trying to muffle out my sounds.
Wow.
And I'm on the other side of a door. So he was able to mask everything that I was doing. And this guy finished he had this conversation for at least a full 15 minutes. Then he hung up. And I was just, I think by this time I had already cried. Like I didn't even have any more tears to shed. I had already given up. And so I sat there. I think it must have been at least an hour when this guy opened the door. And I came out. And he was standing by the door when he opened it. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at anything. I just came out and I headed straight to our water dispenser there. And I sat down and I think I had 4 or 5 glasses of water. It's dead silent too. Nobody's saying a word. This guy's just looking at me. I sit down. I drink 1 cup. I drink 2. I drink the 3rd one, the 4th one, the 5th one. And then I stand up. I grab my water bottle and I'm headed back inside that place that he locked me in. All of a sudden, the guy just dropped to his knees and just started begging me. And he was just like, baby, I'm sorry. Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll never do this again. The guy's going on and on. I don't have a word to say to this guy. And he holds on to my leg. I can't move. And I did not even know when I just started weeping. I was just weeping as this man was trying to placate me and saying whatever it is he was saying. Please don't leave me. I'm so sorry. He was begging me. I could not stop crying. But he didn't let me go. I just had to be just like, you know what? I've heard. Just leave me. Just give me time. Just give me space. So I went off into the room and I was just in a state. That was one of the saddest moments that I'd experienced in that marriage because I just couldn't believe that he did this to me. And I remember saying this, I was just like, you did this to me. Why? That time was just, it's too much. I'm not even sure if I can fully explore everything that the impact of what that day did to me. It was too much.
I think he himself knew he had gone too far when from his reaction after, because the whole thing just sounds so sinister that you would falsely imprison a pregnant woman who feels dehydrated. The whole thing is just, it's extremely abusive. There's just really no other word for it. It's extremely, extremely abusive. And I'm just so sorry that you had to endure that, witness that, be anywhere near any kind of behavior like that. It's beyond despicable.
I'm so sorry, guys. I literally had to pause. I had to pause because it's a lot. It's too much. Even having to recount this like this, it's too much. It feels fucking unfair. It feels, why? Anyway, I had my first and second child close together. They're just 18 months apart. So this was 2018. This was sometime in October or November. No, sometime in October 2018. And later that month, I left to Canada to have my baby. But again, I didn't feel like I could leave. It felt like I couldn't leave this marriage I'm heavily pregnant with this second one now. Where am I? Like, how am I? I left what could have been a different kind of life for myself in Canada. I'm here in Nigeria with this guy who had promised me the world, but so far,
was not delivering.
He is not delivering. And he's had some excuse or the other for why I was living the life that I was living. Holed up in some 2-bedroom apartment, living with 6 other families in the compound. How many were we there? There's all this scarcity in terms of, okay, we're managing how we put on generator. Okay, we're managing how the kind of food we eat.
So a life that was very different from your own upbringing.
Yes.
And
the life of privilege that I grew up on, and this guy had pretended like he understood, and this was the life we were going to live, and this is the family he comes from, so he understands. I was living a very different life. And even then, that was still not even my problem. But all of that compounded on with just the abuse. I just felt trapped. So anyway, I found a way to, again, sweep this under the rug and just be like, maybe I would just modify my own behavior better. Abi, what is it? Because again, he had found a way to blame me and say, I am not training somebody well. Okay. So the next thing now is to be, talking to the nanny and be, try and do things like this, try and do things like that. And his temper, this one, that one. What else is there to do now? Is every other thing except for this man, you have serious problems. Is every other person that will be running, scampering, trying to figure out how to just be coping with this toxic individual. So right. I think for me, being physically confined like that was tough. Toro, this was like a couple years later. What am I saying? At least maybe about a year later, because I'm very close to at the time I was very close to his younger brother. And we were just talking about, the time Paulinus had been in charge of him in Canada, because his family, his siblings had moved to Canada, but his parents were not there. So this boy, who at the time was in middle school, was left in the care of Paulinus. And he was just sharing that, him and Paulinus, they're just now trying to figure out having a better relationship, that when like growing up or whatever, Paulinus was very harsh on me or mean with him. And then he just randomly shared how when they were both in Canada, Paulinus would lock him up as a form of punishment. Toro, I was floored when I heard that.
So this confining people is a pattern of behavior that...
It is a pattern of behavior. Because the way this guy had begged me that day, he had worn me down, made me feel like, oh my God, I don't know what came over me. I've never done this kind of thing before. Please forgive me. So to hear his brother say that, I was like, what? He was like, yeah, that, he used to lock him up.
In the house?
I think it's either the basement or the garage. He said he used to lock him up away in the garage. First of all, he said he'll beat him first, beat him up, then lock him in the garage for hours. This boy will be crying.
My goodness.
I wasn't even sure what I was hearing at first, because I'm just like, So I think one of the times when I would, but maybe shortly after hearing this story, I think I'd called him and I said, hey, your brother told me that you did this. Like, how fun? Like, because he was young then, he was in middle school. How old? He was like, what? It's 11, 12. And there's a huge gap. They have a huge age gap. Paulinus was in his 20s then. And his response was, when he just came up with some sort of nonsense excuse, like, the boy was kind of insufferable in a sense, like, maybe he was always crying for their mom or whatever. And I remember saying that, this is a young boy. He has just left Nigeria. His parents are not there. You can't understand that maybe he may be a bit homesick. You can't understand that he will miss his mom. And okay, if he's being a little bit insufferable, you can't empathize with that. You're just like, that's the boy's business, so that he had bigger fish to fry kind of thing. And that's why he behaved like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just silent hearing him talk, but that thing disturbed me. But if at all I even ever felt, oh, maybe I misheard, or maybe I dreamt up this whole scenario, mommy told me that this Paulinus' mom had told her the same thing. Because for some reason, I don't even know how they even got talking, but his mom had just casually mentioned to my mom that, that's one of the reasons why she came to Canada, and she started to have extended stays in Canada rather than leave the children in the hands of Paulinus, was the stories she was hearing about how he was punishing the boy. And she said it in Yoruba like, Onfiya Jomomi or something. Onfiya Je Omomi. That's why she came back to Canada, or let her take care of her own children herself kind of thing. So this is in the mouths of 3 now. His brother told me. He himself confirmed this. Then his own mother too told my own mom, unbeknownst to me. So that's how I know that, this is a pattern of behavior. Again, I say all of this because, Toro, you've been here with me. His family's behavior has been appalling.
I can confirm.
His family's behavior has been appalling. The way they've antagonized me, the way they are trying to act like they've not taken accountability for anything. They are trying to position as if, number one, we were not there, so we cannot confirm or deny if any of these things that this girl said in her email is true. Then they are now trying to focus on, but why did she leave the way that she did? That's what they're trying to make the problem, that I should not have left, or I should not have run away with the children. Who will not run?
Especially because they are well aware of how this guy is, his behavior,
he's a mad dog.
Belligerence, his just bullying, his domination, all that. Like, not even just to his younger siblings, but even to his parents as well. Wasn't there an incident with his father?
Like that's what I'm trying to say, that these people are well aware of his track record of violence. This is a person. This one is not them say anything. This guy showed up to our house, his face, his fists, bloody and destroyed. He had to have stitches. And I was shocked. I'm like, what happened to your hand? Like me, I was even so upset because I used to tell him that he had really nice fingers or whatever. They are fucked up now permanently. Scarred up because this guy got into some sort of fisticuffs with his father. Oh gosh. I don't even want, the physicality of this guy is not just me that has been a victim of it. His own father physically manhandling this old man. This man is, how old be, with his health issues, everything. Physically manhandling his own father. So that's why for me, I am utterly disgusted by his parents' behavior, because they too, they know. Me, I thought that all of us were in this together, that, this man is mad. How can the rest of us put heads together to just be managing this man? But to see how they've kind of flipped it and tried to throw me under the bus, like, I'm just making up stories. Whereas there's physical evidence of this man being physical with his own father. That's just what's just been so shocking to me. And that's why I can never let this shit go. I can never let it go. I cannot let it go, because his parents know. His family, they know. I am not a liar, and I'm not going to sit here and allow any goddamn person call me a liar. The pattern of violence, of abuse is not from today. It's not from today. And the people that went to school with him, if anybody ever figures out who I'm referring to, which honestly, who knows? But the pattern of violence is from since when he was in school, since he was a kid, secondary school days. This guy was suspended how many times? Almost expelled for physical violence. I was a victim of this man's abuse, physical abuse. And for people who are out there who need to understand what physical abuse entails, yes, sometimes they do in fact lay a finger on you for it to clock into your brain that, oh wow, you've been physically abused. But sometimes they don't even have to touch you before you even still be physically abused, because when they use their physicality and their strength and their demeanor to physically intimidate you, take that also as physical abuse.
It counts. It absolutely does.
My discernment about what I am facing has made me a target, but I must nonetheless speak up. Make no mistake, this is still a live and ongoing issue, and myself, my children, and loved ones continue to be in danger as a result of my coming forward with the truth. I want it on record that should any calamity befall any one of us, my abuser and his threatening family should be the first people held as persons of interest.
Authenticity Warrior is available everywhere you listen to podcasts and is at Authenticity Warrior across all social media platforms. Please feel free to like and share this podcast. Thanks for listening.